Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I want to share with you a brief idea on this week's Torah portion, Parshat Teruma, that deals with the beginning of the building of the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, while the Bnei Israel, the Jews, were traveling in the desert. And the Parsha begins with a strange phrase. It says, V'yichu, that we are to take, the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, are to take a donation in order for the process of building the tabernacle. You would think much more logically it should say V'yitnu, and they shall give. Why that strange language at the very beginning? So to answer that question, I want to ask a more fundamental question of why do we build the tabernacle, the Mishkan, at all? According to this Forno, amongst others, the tabernacle comes as a tikkun, as a corrective, as a repair for the sin of the golden calf. Because we engaged in the sin of the golden calf, this form of idol worship, we have to now correct that by building the Mishkan, the tabernacle. So if that's true, it's somewhat of a strange tikkun, a strange corrective. The sin of the golden calf, which appears as a form of idol worship, appears of a lack of awareness of God. And so the corrective seems to be that we should make the awareness of God, the presence of God, much more manifest. We shouldn't try to limit it. We should actually try to expand our interactions and our connections with God. But that's not what takes place. For example, earlier, if you want to check the sources, in Exodus 20:21, when a person wanted to connect to God, it states that all they had to do was create an earthen altar, and then all of a sudden God would appear and God would relate to them, and God would hear and bless them at that point in time. So you might think if we want to expand the connection to God, the accessibility to God, maybe we even do away with the requirement of building an earthen altar. But that's not what the Mishkan comes along to do. It actually limits God, or seems to limit at least our connection, our accessibility, our sense of God's presence in our lives. No longer can you just build an earthen altar wherever you want. Nowhere can you just turn to God whenever you're in need. No, we have to have a certain place, the Mishkan, and later on the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem, the temple in Jerusalem. There has to be a certain place, and there are certain times that are going to be more unique and more special. It's Shabbat, it's holidays, not just every day, every moment. And then there are also certain people who are charged with operations of this Mishkan, the Kohanim, the priests, and the Levites. It's not about expanding the accessibility to God, but it seems to be about limiting it. And that, in that sense, it doesn't seem like the corrective we need for the lack of God awareness that perhaps led to the sin of the golden calf. So how can we understand that? One possibility could be that, there's a danger when something is so accessible. There is an interesting experiment, sometimes called the mirror experiment, other times called the mirror effect. You ever get this experience where you look yourself in the mirror, you're relatively happy with what you see, and then someone takes a picture and you look at the picture and you feel like, how could that be? You don't look good, you don't understand. Well, this is connected to this mirror effect, or the mirror experiment. According to one study, the average woman in the UK looks at herself in the mirror some 70 times a day. Now, what happens when you look at yourself in the mirror so often is you begin to like what you see. It's called the mirror effect. By merely seeing something again and again and again, one becomes more comfortable with that. One becomes happier with that. And it's not just with how we look, but a whole series of different things. Artwork, Chinese letters they've done experiments with, a whole series of different things that the more you see it, just merely being in its presence makes you feel more comfortable with it. When you see yourself in a picture, however, you look different, because when you see yourself in the mirror, that's not an accurate portrayal of who you are. It's the flipped version. It's a reflection of who you are. And then when you see yourself in the picture, in real life, so to speak, it's the opposite of what you think you look like, but it's actually an accurate picture of what you look like. And so therefore, you are less comfortable with it as a result. And so on one hand, having total accessibility to God, yes, we feel more comfortable. But maybe we shouldn't feel so comfortable. Maybe that's not 100% accurate portrayal of what our relationship with God should be like. Maybe there should be something different in that experience. And this idea of maybe not feeling 100% comfortable. Of course, God is everywhere, and of course, God is accessible everywhere. But maybe we're not meant to always feel that it's so easy to access a relationship with God. And that's the point I want to develop. And it really hit home the other day. There was a snowstorm here in Jerusalem, and a lot of trees were felled throughout the whole city and in our particular apartment area as well. And so today, after hitting myself in the head yesterday with a fallen tree, I decided that I was going to clear off all the trees in our courtyard down below our apartment. And I started to go down to do it. I got a saw and I got some other things. And my 4-year-old son, who is home as a result of quarantine because of COVID, he himself doesn't have it, but he has to stay out of school, asked if he could come down. And I said, no, just stay up here, relax. You're in the warm. It's cold outside. You're eating. Enjoy. And I'll just go down and do the hard work. And he said no, and he began to get very sad and almost cry. He wanted to go down and do it with me. And so we got our clippers and we went down and we started sawing and cutting and clipping. And I told him again, why don't you sit aside? I'll do the hard work. And he says, no, he wants to do it. He wants to be involved. He wants to contribute. And when I was finished, he actually wanted to continue to do even more. Let's take care of this. Let's fix that. And it struck me as very interesting. You know, one of the reasons why I like hanging out with young kids is they sometimes have or at least reveal a greater insight into human nature. You know, we as we get older, you know, life gets in the way, and so sometimes it blocks and covers what is really the essence of a human being. But the kid still has that essence, and so, you know, because life is challenging and tough, and we never have enough time, I would have thought, and myself, I probably would have preferred not to have to go down and do the work. I would have probably enjoyed just sitting, relaxing, a cup of coffee for a few minutes. But my son, I think, is a reflection of the more true nature of what it means to be a human. He wanted to be involved. He wanted to work. He wanted to, in a sense, be challenged with his life. Just getting everything you want is not a challenge, and there's something dehumanizing, as it were. At least from our real nature as God created us, by not having to work. And I was thinking about that idea a little bit, and then I came across the Gemara in Yoma. Gemara in Yoma, page 74, says something very, very, very shocking. It says, when the Jews were in the desert, and God was giving them the manna, the man, as miraculous food, God afflicted us and caused us pain. And it seems to be a contradictory idea. The man is miraculous food. I mean, it comes every day. Our sages teach us that it could taste whatever you want it to taste like. It was nourishing. How is that an affliction? How is that causing us pain by experiencing this miracle? I would think the exact opposite. So on that daf, on that page, there are already a few suggestions that are offered. One points out that having food in your basket is not like not having food in your basket. One of the requirements of the manna miracle experience is that it would be given to us afresh every single day, but you couldn't sort of collect and get extra. It wasn't Costco where you could just put everything in storage afterwards. You had to each day go out and collect it. And there's perhaps a little bit of angst in that experience. You know, you have enough food for that day, but you don't have leftovers, and you can't be guaranteed that there'll be tomorrow as well. There is always tomorrow. You have to have faith, and you go out again. But the lack of having that extra on hand perhaps caused a little bit of angst. And that's one explanation of what it meant, that there was an affliction in this miracle of manna. Another interpretation points out that eating is not just a gastrological experience, but it's also a vision experience. And so the food could taste whatever you wanted, but it looked the exact same. And there's a certain boredom when food looks the exact same. We like the diversity of colors. In fact, there's an evolutionary reason for that. You know, when you see all these different colors of food, you get more excited about what you're going to eat, but it also represents a much greater biodiversity of nutrients that our body needs. And that's one of the sad things. There's a book called Empire of Food that's just one of the sad things of all this monoculture of where whole countries are now just growing corn or just growing this type of wheat, and we lack the diversity. We're missing out on that, and we like the diversity, especially in color. So maybe that was part of the pain. Rabbi Yossi, however, gives a third explanation, which really strikes me as true. He says that when God chooses to punish someone or punish something, God does so differently than human beings. If I got into a fight with another person and I wanted to punish them, I would take things away from them. I would try to make their life more difficult. That I would try to make their livelihood more challenging. That's not so with God. The way God punishes, says Rabbi Yossi, is that God gives us more. God makes life easier. Gives the example of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Right? When the serpent is punished, God says, now you're going to get your food by the belly of your stomach. You're going to go around on the ground, and the food will be in front of you. So the punishment usually is understood, well, now that he has to eat off the ground, whatever he finds to eat, there'll be dust sort of mixed in with his food. But what Rabbi Yossi understands is, no, the punishment is now that the serpent will have a great plentiful amount of food wherever he goes. He's always going to have food in front of him. It's an abundance. And that's his punishment, that he has great abundance. He doesn't have to struggle as much as he used to. Another example has to do with when a person is required to become a servant of another. Usually it's a form of punishment. He stole something, let's say, as we learned last week in the Parsha of Mishpatim. But again, the punishment, according to Jewish law, of slavery is different than what you might usually think it would be. Servitude in Jewish law means that you have to eat the same quality of food that your master eats. You have to drink the same quality that the master provides everything for you. You don't have to provide for the education of your children. The master takes care of that. He's responsible for the raising of them. In a sense, you've lost some of your freedom, but you're also freed up from all these other responsibilities and challenges. You don't have to worry where your next meal is going to come from, or other things like that. And so the punishment again is that you lose the opportunity to be challenged in life. And I think there's something very, very deep and important in that there's a blessing in challenges. The Gemara also talks about a disagreement over how the third Beit HaMikdash, the third temple, will be built. One opinion says it will be miraculous. It will come down in a vision of fire from the heavens and be pre-built, already ready, 100% without human involvement. The other opinion is no, it's going to come through natural means, that human beings are going to have to work for that, have to create the ideal society that allows for that, and then do the physical labor of building the temple. So the Gemara then continues to say this is not a conflict. Both are possibilities. If one is worthy, if we are worthy, it will come one way. And if we are not worthy, it will come the other way. I think instinctually most of us assume that if we are worthy, it will come miraculously from the sky. And if we are not worthy, we'll have to work and do all the hard labor ourselves. But I'm thinking it's actually the opposite. That if we are worthy, God will give us the opportunity to struggle and really try to create that ideal society and be challenged and tested. Because in the challenging testing is when we grow. That's what my son wanted. He wanted an opportunity to grow and to do something that he hadn't done previously, to learn something new, to be tested. And I think that's what the Mishkan ultimately then is all about. Yes, the Mishkan limits our accessibility to God. Our relationship no longer just wherever you want to, you turn to God. Yes, you can do that, of course. But at the same time, by creating the Mishkan, we are also reminding ourselves that we have to work at this relationship with God. It's not at all times. There are certain times that we're going to have to invest more energy. And it's not in all places. We have to get out of bed, and we have to go to certain locations. We have to join communities. We have to contribute to those communities. We have to come to Jerusalem. We have to do a little bit of work and go out of our comfort zone. And we have to become different people. We have to transform ourselves to strengthen this relationship. And I think maybe that's also the response to the change of language at the very beginning of the Torah portion. And they will take as opposed to they will give. They will give makes more sense. But what God is reminding us with the Mishkan is that sometimes when God takes away something from us, he's actually giving us something. And when God makes it more challenging, more difficult, that's when the opportunity for us to really give and grow in our relationship with God develops. And therefore, we're hinted at that at the very beginning of this process. Everyone should have a Shabbat Shalom.